Barack Obama has a way with words.
You can't say it, but you know it's true.
And words have forged a way for Cody Keenan.
It's a humbling profession because we did 3,577 speeches and statements while he was in office.
Keenan, now a member of the former president's personal staff, grew from campaign intern to Obama's chief speechwriter in 2013. But he's the first to tell you he got by with a little help from his friends.
I was never the sole writer. You know, Barack Obama was a writer before any of us came around. He reminds us all the time that he wrote the 2004 DNC speech that made him famous all by himself, as if we needed the reminder.
Let's talk about the farewell address. There was one line.
If you're tired of arguing with strangers on the internet, try talking with one of them in real life.
Did you write that?
I'm glad you asked about that. My wife came up with that line.
Oh, and your wife is also like your editor, right?
Yeah.
Or your fact checker.
Yeah, she worked in the White House. She wore a lot of hats. One of them was a fact checker.
How'd that go?
Well, I always joke that she gets paid to tell me I'm wrong. And she still fact checks me now, even though we're not in the White House.
It's a good line.
It was a good laugh line. It got a lot of applause. I think it resonated with a lot of people. You know, it's one of the challenges in politics right now is that, you know, in this day and age, we have access to more information than ever before. We could be the most informed people in the history of the world, and yet we create these cocoons for ourselves of just like-minded individuals.
What is it like to write for a president who is speaking to such a divided nation?
It's always a challenge. It's always a challenge, especially someone who, you know, rose to power and first became famous by insisting that we were not a divided nation.
It was a challenge Keenan took on often, most notably in Obama's speech in Selma, Alabama, that commemorated the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday.
Because the single most powerful word in our democracy is the word we.
And again after mass shootings in Tucson, Newtown, and Charleston.
How do you approach those situations to where, you know, a nation is in mourning, but still there's an issue at hand that we need to talk about?
It's a good question. It's, you know, a president's, one of his responsibilities is to be a consoler in chief. You know, and we had to do that way too many times.
How sweet the sound.
You know, 90% of the country supported background checks. I think 70% of NRA households supported background checks. And the day that failed in the Senate, you know, only in the United States Senate can something fail with 54 votes. That was probably the most cynical I ever got about Washington. And it was one of the very few times I actually saw him pissed off when that failed.
Did you ever screw up?
Sure, all the time.
What's that feedback like when, like, your boss, who is the president, is like, this is shit?
It blows. I mean, he was nice enough to never say this is shit. I'd usually say, this needs work. You know, I think we can improve on this.
Okay.
It's not exactly what I want to say. He was gentle with his criticism, but he was quiet with his praise too. You know, the best you'd normally get was, I think this is pretty good, or I think that worked.
And Keenan's writing worked for Obama. According to the New York Times, the president christened him with the nickname Hemingway for the work churned out by the bearded and burly Keenan. Turns out, the moniker doesn't come from strong writing, rather an appreciation for strong drinks.
The whole Hemingway thing was bullshit. First of all, there is nothing in a political speech that sounds remotely like Hemingway. And it wasn't because of the beard. It actually, you know, I didn't tell the story in the White House, but I felt freer to tell it now. It's because one night we were in Paris, and I'd finished a draft of the speech for the 70th anniversary of D-Day, and the president liked it. He was like, this is great, let's just lock it down. So, you know, a bunch of us from the White House just decided to go out all night in Paris and went back to the hotel at like 6 in the morning. So when we got in, someone dimed us out to the president. And he came back on the plane. He was like, oh, Movable Feast is back.
For the record, A Movable Feast is Ernest Hemingway's memoir documenting his life as a young writer in Paris, doing young people things. Classic comedy I probably would have learned if I had treated college like Keenan.
Growing up, were you super goal-oriented? Was this, I mean, it doesn't seem like this was the plan, but...
It wasn't even the plan when it happened. I mean, I wasn't that goal-oriented. I was just a good student and a voracious reader. And I think that more than anything else is what prepared me to be a speechwriter, was reading.
Any good books we should check out? Any recs?
God,
I just read Becoming Beyonce, like an unauthorized biography. That's my only recommendation right now.
You know, it's probably most of my favorite books would be cliche, but the one I can think of that probably set me on this course more than any other was The Color Purple, as weird as that sounds. Because that was one of those books that exposed me to lives that were nothing like my own. and pain that was nothing like my own, and injustice and unfairness. And more than anything else, those are the things that kind of drove me into public service.
Cody Keenan is woke, you guys.
Woke, super woke.
Super woke.
Ironically, the speechwriter has only given 2 speeches in his entire life. One of them was at an NYU commencement for public service graduates.
So in that speech, you mentioned the importance of being a part of something bigger than yourself. Why is that important?
You know, you can give the big picture answer, and it's the only way this country's ever worked. But, you know, I think maybe in our generation, we just kind of crave something bigger and full of purpose. You know, I've always been searching for a sense of purpose, and I found it in politics and public service. I found it on the first campaign. I found it every day in the White House. And, you know, I have no idea where I'm going to find it now. That's the scary thing, being outside of the White House. But, you know, especially on a campaign, you gain this family because you're all working together 20 hours a day for no money and busting your ass and then searching for cheap beer at night.
What's your cheap beer of choice? PBR?
Didn't matter.
Ooh, free?
Didn't matter. Well, PBR became expensive when it became hipster beer.
It's like $3 now. That's bullshit. So you started in this building we're in right now in 2007 as an intern on the Obama campaign.
Yeah.
What would you tell your 2007 self right now?
He wouldn't believe it. He wouldn't believe it.
What do you still want to accomplish?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I mean, you know, I was just joking with my wife about this the other day, who worked in the White House too, and it seems like all of a sudden, now that I'm out of the White House, I went from 26 years old to 36, and it's like, what happened in the middle? Because it was all White House. It's all White House. So I'm still trying to figure out like who I am, what I want my life to be now. You know, I think the first thing we'll try to accomplish is getting a dog, and then we'll move on to children.
Any kind of breed you're looking at?
I want a big dog, she wants a little dog, so
Ooh.
Marriage is about compromise.
His boss likely agrees.
And democracy requires compromise. Even when you are 100% right,